Come with me and you'll see a world, something, something imagination. Do 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 do. And away we go. Can I read with Miss Swift? Chapter 7. The Spires. The High Spires. We have tea with the Vizier tonight, don't forget, Kanto reminded her in the morning. Dinner with the Vizier and famous music teacher, Murray said. She popped a saline pill. How exciting. Tonight? Shep asked. Yes, it's family night, Kanto said. Jhee swapped days so she could deal with the yacht repairs. No one told me. It'd be an insult to cancel now that we've confirmed. Jhee covered her Eska. Yesterday had been Shep's day. They had swapped it with her open day, which should have been today, so she could attend to the yacht repairs. She often spent the free days with him anyway. She had only glanced at the invite key since she had not intended to accept. She took Shep's hand. Are you up to this? She whispered. He glanced at Kanto and Ray discussing outfits. You don't suppose he did it deliberately? Regardless, I will respect your wishes, insult or not. Moray's perked up. They're both so looking forward to it. I've had years with you all by my lonesome. I can spare some of it for them. You know, I hadn't wanted to do this at all. One tea was enough, but I aired with Kanto and thought this would smooth it over. Shall I draft marriage contracts and bring quills? For the Vizier? I should hope not. Besides, do you want to be the one to explain to Lady Cadence how we married her precious jewel to a cloistered hermit? Shep grimaced. Good point. Fancy some investigating together like we used to? I wouldn't feel comfortable leaving them unguarded. See to your duties, Jhee. Shep patted her hand and joined the others in picking out clothes. Once Jhee and company had eaten a light morning meal, they took advantage of the Maker's shrine in the designated courtyard to do their morning devotions. Kanto sketched off alone by himself, while she and Murray did their lessons with Shep as their pace setter. What did you and Kanto quarrel about now? Murray asked. His mood changed suddenly. He's been rather sulky, not his usual upbeat self. No crosstalk, Jhee replied. My time, my topics. We've only spoken or ever seen each other today in passing. In passing today. Not so last night. Nothing is happening with us. Murray raised an eyebrow. The root problem. Make something happen. Put aside your reservations. Teach him casting. I'm hardly a proper teacher. It hasn't stopped you with me. Men, men are different. Besides, I can hardly do so here, can I? Sounds like excuses. I'll talk to him later, though, if it will ease your bothered mind. Ray tapped the tip of Jee's nose. It would. That is all I ask. We shall speak no more of the menfolk for the remainder of our appointment. Clear and center your mind, Jhee said. Jhee and Murray shook out their arms. Jhee instructed Murray how to plant her feet wide and drop her weight in to ensure she could not be uprooted while ciphering. Using his old battle drum and heavy striker, Shep beat it to set the tempo. They practiced grounding themselves for several minutes. Focus on directing your weight down through your anchoring gears. When she instructed Murray in the ciphering forms, the forces trembled and echoed, some residual effect on the subtle energies from the tremors. If the healing powers of this place weren't pure fancy, what impact might it have on the prime forces one drew on while ciphering? Was there more method than mania to the restrictions? Flowers and makergeld decorated the rubble in a section of the courtyard with no effigies. Was this where they found the perspective crushed by falling debris? No trace of high-velocity spatter. Jhee shielded her eyes as she scanned up the length of the spires. They cast long shadows. Brilliant emerald and ruby coral clashed with those ghastly statues. Her mind began to work out the angles and trajectories required for anything which fell from a tower to land here or in the water. Next she knew, she had her conch out. Murray and Shep cleared their throats. Jhee tucked it back in her robes. Murray hugged Jhee's arm. Someone died here. You'd be hard-pressed to find a patch of ground on or over which someone hasn't died, Shep replied. At some point, Canto said, but not weeks ago. No wonder the residents whisper about hauntings. Jhee narrowed her eyes at the courtyard's far wall. Had she merely imagined what she saw at the courtyard shrine? Spirits and echoes of the past abound here, the prioress said. The prioress approached Jhee. The abbess instructed me to give you a tour of the Abbey, the prioress said. She said you spoke about it after the feast. That we did. The tour began at the gardens near their courtyard. They found Sister Sarah overlooking a sparse contingent of prospectives tending an herb garden. Justicar, what a lovely surprise! I was just about to make my rounds of the orchards and vineyards. Would you like me to explain to you our operations? Please, Denbei. Can we? Maria asked. As much as Jhee would have liked to, she thought about how it might affect Murray to take a long journey in this damp. She wished she had had the presence of mind to see the litter prepared for their excursion. Perhaps later. Murray pouted. Sister Sarah took notice of her action. A tour of the agropods, then? Murray glimmered her eyes at Jhee. Jhee smiled. Lead the way, Jhee said. One thing first. Sister Sarah pulled out a magnifier and examined a vine bearing shriveled grapes. What are you looking for? Murray asked. Noble rot. Shep whispered to Murray, who asked, For a new wine? Sarah raised her head from the bunch. Might as well put this mold and mildew to productive use. You know about viticulture? Not as much as I'd like. Why a new wine rather than increased production of tranquility gold? The soil tutelaries responsible for the unique flavor of tranquility gold only inhabit the slopes. Not only is that area hard to work, but it's also at capacity. We can add the sweeter wines, which can only be made from grapes afflicted by a certain fungus, to our list of offerings. Sister Sarah winked. Jhee moved forward. Shep laid a hand on her wrist. Very sensible. I'm most interested in your sustainability and vertical farming. Blight destroyed part of our crops last year. Some affected fields became rice paddies. If we can increase the yields on the pods, we can protect them from the extreme weather. Jhee stopped at a trellis of beige, wrinkled melons interlaced amongst spindly, vivid sea-green vines. The lattice occupied a sunny corner of the garden not far from an apple tree and work shed. Underneath the tree, a stone memorial bench had been erected. Ha! Laceroot melons, Canto explained. He slipped between Jhee and Shep. This was one of Sahelli's favorite spots. Secluded, she said. She used to counsel many perspectives here in private. Not entirely in private, the prioress said. Private enough. I didn't mean it like that. I'm sure you didn't. It saddened me to hear of Sahelli's passing, Jhee said. Their tour group rode a hand-operated lift up the Agripod Tower. Sister Sarah pointed across the way. I saw her up there that day. She hailed me in the pods as normal. Then like that, she passed to the makers. The prioress scoffed. Jhee faked astonishment. Is that where? A storm blew in after Sahelli made the climb. We checked her and found her passed out with the tower door open. Nectar drink and sticky paw prints everywhere. Drenched cat tore up the whole herb garden while we helped Sahelli. It was good about keeping the crab rats out, but ate almost anything. After Sarah showed them about the agropods, they returned to the herb garden. What's up next on the agenda, Justicar? The archives. Eh, Lethy's luck to you with that. Careful, Justicar, you committed the most grievous of sins. You failed to condemn me one too many times. You'll be lucky if she lets you anywhere near the reliquary now. The middle spire. The prioress brought her group to the archival wing. While there, Jhee decided to improve her map. A structure this old and storied was bound to have many hidden architectural features. She had best get started learning them now. She might be able to find the building plans, island survey maps, and tide charts somewhere in their records. By the time their company reached the archives, Jhee had to keep her hands tucked in her robes to keep them still. The archivist popped her head out from behind an enormous book stand when Jhee and her entourage entered the library. The archivist's desk guarded the staircase to what appeared the only entrance to the library and reliquary proper. Anyone who wanted entry had to go through her. She sniffed. You. Sister Elkanah, Jhee said. What do you want? The prioress answered. The abbess asked that I give the Justicar and her family a tour of the Abbey. I also thought perhaps you might show us around your magnificent archive, Jhee said. Sister Elkanah sniffed again. She directed a most scathing glare at the two men in Jhee's entourage. It wilted in comparison to the one she reserved for Jhee. We're quite busy. Jhee glanced around at the mostly empty library. A few professeds and the odd perspective occupied the rows of desks which at one point might have housed hundreds. Many tables bore scratches and peeling surfaces. One section, though, boasted new gleaming counters with good indirect lighting. The archivist tucked the book she had been reading under her arm. As they passed by the head desk, a knot formed in Jhee's stomach when she saw the archivist had several copies of Jhee's fictionalized accounts of her travels with Jeja Marpale, dispatches from Arrow Point arrayed on it. I take it you had time to review my requests again? I have. I have some concerns. The archivist stopped at the threshold of the archives and faced Jhee, the book she carried now fully visible. The faded cover of her grandmother's screed on marriage, politics, and race confronted her. Jhee's stomach dropped through the floor. She almost smelled her hopes of extended time in the archives going up in smoke. Quite controversial notions to be exposed to so young. A concern I had when I initially viewed your proposals. You looked into my family history? I was made aware of it and yours. The archivist held her chin up. Seeing firsthand you do not hold to your family's controversial views on marriage, at least, has assuaged them. Nothing leaves the archives. May anyone who takes holy orders access the archives? Yes, Jhee continued when Sister Sarah didn't elaborate. I couldn't help but notice your carols and duplicators. You do transcription and manuscript copying. I wonder if I might copy some of Phaedra's works. I understand you have some of the original founding text as well as one of the earliest reproductions of Phaedra's ciphering manuals and schematics. I heard of its famed translucent pages which glimmer in the light. Exposure to light in the elements can be extremely damaging to the text. Access to it is even more restricted. Duplication is on a case-by-case basis. While we have duplicators and image capture stations, not everything can be exposed to such direct lighting. Understandable. I might be honored to even see it from a distance. It's best not to be too enamored of the trappings of earthly wonders. The true wonders are the miracles of the makers. Phaedra's schematics, while impressive, are the work of mere mortals. I debate they should even be housed with our most sacred relics. You hold, then, there is no divine inspiration to her discovery. We must concern ourselves more with following the path which leads to reconciliation with the makers. They are mostly secular works and are such must be put in their proper context with respect to the teachings of the makers. No males allowed in the arcane archives whatsoever or near our most sacred relics. Not even to provide more hands for transcription and preservation. The rough handling of their coarse, ungainly hands is as liable to pulverize as preserve our sacred relics. Women's slender, more graceful fingers are perfect for capturing the nuances of scripture and formulae and the fine art of reservation. No, the most sacred books and relics are reserved for the eyes of women alone, particularly given the vast array of arcane knowledge they contain. Jhee tucked her hands in her robes. This place and their backward rules. Kanto tugged on Jhee's sleeve and shook his head. My family and I considered an outing to explore the grounds and island a bit. Would it be possible to view any survey maps of the area or travel logs and travelers' accounts? This isn't some holiday resort and the library some brochure center. Sister Elkanah was pricklier than a pufferfish. Jhee usually had wheedled her way to the offline catalogs by now. It didn't help the woman pierced her pressure points. What of the works of the previous abbess? I saw an example of Haley's artwork outside the vizier's chamber. I heard some of her artworks, along with her final sermon, are housed here in the archives. Kanto nodded at Jhee. I'm afraid males are not permitted to enter this part of the sanctum. Your husbands are welcome to wait here for us. We can circle back and pick them up later. Kanto stepped up. Tenbei. Tenbei and I need to choose our outfits for tea with the vizier. The vizier? Oh yes, Sister Elkanah, Kanto said. My esteemed wife took tea with her last night. She invited us to dine with her tonight. Wow. If the vizier will allow you around her antiquities, she must be reasonably confident you won't damage them. Nice to see the archives suffered minimal damage in the quake. Were you there during Sahelli's final sermon? All the most prestigious residents were. Sister Elkanah drummed her fingers against the cover of Grandma Mare's book. Forgive my overstepping at the feast, Sister Elkanah. Sometimes my passion for mechanism gets the better of me. What I really might like to read are histories about the island and the Mist Abbess. You'd do better to read the Cyclogenesis sermons. A recommendation tantamount to calling Jhee impious. She counted to 3 before she spoke again. Who's your preferred sage? Cateron's my personal favorite. Perhaps you'd guide me to where they're kept. I don't have time for you now. It's important work you do here, preserving all this history. Jhee moved to some structure prints and arcane manuals on a carol stand. Are these old renovation plans for the Abbey? This must be the original designs of the cloister. And this, the vertical farming tower. Does this describe the preservation process? Sister Alcama slammed the screed on a desk. I thought you were taking a tour. Then be about your business and leave me to mine. Access to the archives had been within Jhee's grasp. She cast a forlorn glance at them and the archives as the three left. Was Sister Elkanah's extreme reaction to the topic of the Mist Abbess more sinister than pious? The twin spires. Every time Jhee wanted to inquire more into the details of the death, she remembered she had Murray with her. Are there lifts in the spires? Stairs, replied the prioress. Murray's labored breathing filled the corridor. Star Mirror, Jhee said, using Murray's outside name. Would you like me to have someone escort you back to the room so you can prepare? Murray curtsied. If Dinmay thinks that's best. I do. Murray took her leave. I'll show you where Saheli died. Jhee's conscience tugged at her to start with the prospective's deaths. She considered exploring the Isle and the place where the prospective had drowned, but she would stay within the grounds so she would not be late for tea. Would you show me to the beach tower? Saheli collapsed in the bridge tower. I'm aware. The prioress brought her to the beach axis of the Abbey, where they climbed the long spiral stairway to the top. She unlocked a door which led to a rotunda. Archways had been carved out and filled with ornate railings to prevent mishaps. Is this door locked at all times? The door did not show signs of forced entry. It had a flimsy lock which would not have taken much effort to prise open. Usually, but it would not take much to open. We find many perspectives and professed come up here to think and reflect. Much like the other spire, which was one of Saheli's favorite places to seek solitude and contemplation. Thick layers of pollen covered everything. Most of the footprints weren't recent, with Jhee's and the prioress's being the only new ones. Jhee trailed her finger through the pitted green dust covering the railing. That spoke of several cycles of rain and drying since anyone had wiped it. She tried to conceive a logical explanation. You did not think it unusual for the prospective to have come up here alone? Alone, yes. If I may be candid, some come up here for much more unseemly pursuits, which is why we had to start locking it. The abbess and I possess the only keys and sign it out as needed to those who petition us for its use. Jhee dusted off her hands. The pollen had begun to bring tears to her eyes. Are we sure he was alone? I kept the bed check. All the other perspectives and professed were accounted for. What of the senior clergy? What exactly are you implying, Justicar? I'm trying to learn the positions of bodies in the system. Jhee thought of what she had seen in the shrine. All perspectives are accounted for now? The prioress sucked her teeth. Yes, and none are missing limbs either. Mind if I have a moment alone to explore the spire a bit? The prioress gave a curt bow before stepping out. This spire afforded a fantastic view of the glory and majesty of the sea, the only power greater than oneself. Isles dotted the landscape off until forever, the blessed isles. She savored the salt on her lips. Used to be all crystal blue waves and white sandy beaches at this time of day. She imagined how calm and meditative this place would be in clear weather. The blessed isles. How many of those isles would remain once this was done? lost to wind and erosion from the drenched shield. She remembered how far out you could see from the top rooms of her mountain home. No, she thought. They needed the shield to protect them from invaders who would violate their water boundaries and terrorize their lands. The barbarian threat was real, yet should they fight their own brother and sister races? Is that really part of the First Maker's design? The shield was best for them and us. It removed the temptation to war. Jhee pulled out her conch to note her findings. No signal and still almost full. She peered at the hillside underneath the spire. Around the edge of the bluff, she thought she could see flickering lights. The sea wisps? She joined the prioress on the stairs. "Show me the bridge tower, please." The prioress brought her up another high spire. So many stairs. This place atop its height resembled the other. The space atop its height resembled the other, except well kept. Archways had likewise been carved and fitted with railings, all except one which led to a little overhanging platform. The wind howled and rain pattered against the roof before accumulating to drip down onto the floor. The view was as breathtaking as the climb. Jhee rested against the low rail. One overlooked nearly the whole isle from here. This spire's twin in the taller spire partially blocked the view. No doubt from the stormlight deck, little escaped notice. Mighty sea, high bluffs, wetlands. The billowing mass of the storm shield dominated the horizon. Lightning flashes from within brightened its ever-present glow. She squinted against an occasional glint from the solar array field when lightning escaped the bounds of the shield. Beautiful vibrancy hid underneath new and near constant fog and mellowing gray. The bright, cheery isle now plagued by storm and rain. Even when not storming, claustrophobic cloud cover persisted. How much more spectacular the view must have been before the shield. At the right time of day, in better weather, the light would be perfect for painting and photography. Sahéli made this climb how often? Every day, including the day of her transfiguration. She must have been most fit. Jhee pointed at scorched roofing tiles. Is this where she ascended? Nope. Sometimes the reflections from a misguided solar array get too hot. Jhee held tight to the rough coral arch as she inched out onto the overhang. She found paint splotches and some scratches from Sahéli's easel and tripod. A little lean, more than Jhee found comfortable, gave a good overview of the domed hothouses. She gave a sigh once safely back on the landing. Fit and fearless. Further in the distance, away from the town proper, ramshackle huts and cook fires dotted the landscape. Those are the refugee camps? The prioress's perpetual frown deepened. The loss of landmass and rapid erosion near the storm zone have driven many closer and closer to high ground such as Toro's Isle. The same happened on my home isle. Jhee remembered the prioress's comment about supplicants. Many seek to take holy orders? Sahéli encouraged it. Pirmo has been more restrictive, males in particular. Strange, so many young men taking vows. Those refugees left their home for better lives. As a larger isle, Turtle's Isle has game enough and land for crops and flower beds. It is in no danger of being lost to the sea, which is why it sees so many on their way to elsewhere. The capital will not be able to accommodate them all. With proper education and training, some may find work on the shield or in mining. Some have made the calculation it might be better to stay at places such as this. I've seen some of the places in the far reaches. The Abbey is indeed an improvement from what many might normally expect. The prioress expression and tone softened. More than that, Justicar, as lay people or charity cases, what we provide them was much more limited. Many joined the Abbey to have full bellies. The Abbey makes use of who it can. The refugees are cheap labor for fishing and farming. As prospectives, they can get an education, better quality food and accommodation, and to serve the makers as they will. In that light, it does make much more sense. Jhee noted this on her conch. She returned to the platform and held her conch aloft. High spires, high bluffs, so many dangerous heights on this isle. It protects our privacy and allows us forewarning should trouble come our way. With enough of us being veterans, I suspect any coming to do us harm, as in the raiding days, would no longer find us such easy prey. I suspect not. How long have you been prior? I was raised to the priory upon Piramo's appointment as abbess. She held a position before me. Was it you who found Saheli collapsed? Sister Sarah. I arrived soon after. The horticulturist claims she came to return her cat. I insisted we take Saheli to the infirmary. Both claimed it unnecessary. Perhaps if I had been more insistent. Jhee noted that too. Another failed transfer notice greeted her. The prioress scowled. Am I boring you? I'm listening. I thought maybe I could get a signal out. Any updates on the antenna? It's been too overcast. For a strong signal, try the solar array fields or the stormlight tower. Would you show me to where Saheli transcended? The prioress's stern expression returned. This way. The choral cloister lesson hall presented such an unremarkable backdrop to such a remarkable event. Clean boards for instructions faced worn benches and chairs. Jhee considered how one might get from here to the courtyards or the abbess's chamber. What time of day was it when she ascended? Afternoon. Any idea why Saheli collapsed? Heat stroke, dehydration. The double sunlight can become intense on clear days. Forward thinking to have fruit beer on hand, Saheli must have gotten so engrossed in work she forgot to drink some. What do you think about these rumors of the Mist Abbess? The prioress's face lost expression. The Abbey's history has not always been a peaceful one. When the barbarians sacked it, they slaughtered lesser spouses and children who had hidden here for safety. Prior to that, it was controlled by the Middle Pillarists during the atrocities. In those days, it was called Swordbridge. The Drakist adepts renamed it along with what we now call the Beach Tower. Adepts? Yet you eschew Arcana. Our abbey was originally founded by ex-soldiers who had turned to the ways of spiritual reflection. Yet the space remembers. They say the barrier between the first realms of the dead and the last realms of the living is then here, there. Jhee started calculating angles of reflections. First Maker's Folly! Is that the time? I'm afraid I must interrupt the tour. Would we be able to see the Stormlight Tower tomorrow? A second day away from my duties is unacceptable. Thank you for your assistance. I shall let the First Maker's design guide my steps then. End of chapter 7. Chapter 8. Doo-da, doo-da, da-da-da-da-da-da. Oh, the Chapter 8. Chapter 8. Family Tea Time. Make for make. You're late, Kanto said, and you look a fright. I know, I know. The small wash basin on a nearby table showed he had anticipated tardiness. Kanto spared her a frown but did not pause the painstaking process of lacquering Minere's nails. His had been freshly touched up and colored to complement his turquoise outfit. She cleaned herself while the rest of her cohort dressed in silence. Every now and then Kanto set the lacquer bottle down with a punctuated thud. Kanto approached to brush her hair. Her headache had returned. When she began favoring the bridge of her nose, Mireille appeared from nowhere again with the poultice. After eyeing the poultice briefly, Kanto checked the time and sighed. You wore one the last time you saw her. We'll pretend it's your look. He found a scarf to match the robes he had chosen for her. Early is on time and on time is late. I swear, if we insult the vizier. Despite Kanto's fear, they arrived fashionably early. However, Mireille alone spoke to her during the trip. Kanto was giving her the felled fish routine, while Shep was Shep. He detested visits such as this. Both had brought an item to showcase their talents. Kanto his lute and Shep his Kalacha war club. A further reason for him to be ill at ease. Lady Bathsheba welcomed them with more formal bows rather than forearm clasps. Your prompt response to my invitation was an unexpected delight. The watermarks, so elegant. Star Mirror, Bright Harmony, Dawn Wolf. Outside naming. Such formality. You are indeed a quaint cohort. I took the liberty of having a meal prepared. All honors to you, Lady Bathsheba, and I took the liberty of providing entertainment. Make for make. The tea table had been extended to make room for 5. Opposite the table, a little performance chair had been set out. Kanto and Shep displayed the lute and kalacha on it for later. Lady Bathsheba gave Jhee and her senior spouse pride of place to either side, with her junior spouses seated farthest away. Kanto offered to pour the tea. After tea and pleasantries, her spouses set up to perform. Mireille performed a Stations of the Moon cipher. Jhee mouthed along as Mireille performed each station flawlessly, as they had practiced so many times. When she found herself miming along as well, she stilled herself. While the cipher was overly elaborate for what it did, it demonstrated many of the fundamental skills and techniques of the craft. At the close, the vase emitted a shower of shimmering cherry blossoms instead of the usual sparkles. Translucent blossom illusions evaporated as they landed upon the rug. The Stations of the Moon was one of the required entrance ciphers for the magic program at the Academy. A wide grin overtook Jhee. She, Lady Bathsheba, and Shep clapped in appreciation. Jhee perhaps with too much animation. She calmed herself when she saw Shep snicker. Cantor hovered about the edges, appearing whenever their teacups emptied. Shep came to her aid with a distraction. I must compliment the vizier on your collection of relics. Is that him tutorial scroll worker in those aprons? Indeed it is. You have a discerning eye. Next, Shep took center stage to perform a battle stomp. Kanto had retired to the wings to sketch and prepare for his performance. Shep looked to Jhee before he began. She gave a slight smile and nod of encouragement. He performed one of the stomps their old unit did for inspections or when dignitaries came to visit. Your performance of Stations of the Moon was simply masterful, my dear. The vizier is most kind. It's thanks in no small part to Denbei's excellent tutelage. Murray gave Jhee demur, demure eye twinkles, then a wink. Perhaps the young lady laid it on a bit thick. Lady Bathsheba unfurled the finger maze on the table. Justicar, if you don't mind, I also brought up the finger maze you admired so much on your last visit once again. You and Star Mirror might be interested in trying it together. Jhee and Murray finger cast through the levels of the finger maze. Lady Bathsheba watched with a visage of barely contained excitement. She hopes to begin teaching my fellow junior spouses as well. Diniz is likely to flourish under her tutelage, under her direction as I am. Lady Bathsheba regarded them with a bemused expression. Nonsense. The subtleties, the nuance, the grace required of ciphering is too taxing for the male character. Common elemental grunt work is the only training suitable for men. Could you imagine if men were as proficient with fire as women? They'd fireball everything in sight. Yet some men are proficient with fire and have yet to burn the place down. I owe that to most of the empire being on water. With the question thoroughly answered as to whether Marie and Lady Bathsheba would get along, she changed the subject. How long have you resided here, Lady Bathsheba? Longer than I want to admit. I retired from court after the death of my third husband. What a talented cohort you have. You have your males well trained and well appointed. A state I had not expected given our previous meeting. The traditional figure of your anchor spouse shows the markers of virility and fitness. I never quite went in for Silver Fangs myself. He does, however, make me see the appeal. Shame about his eye, though. Was it a consequence of his military service? The vizier is quite astute. His tattoos and the recognition of the scrollwork. I've been around quite a few veterans. Kanto began a performance of Freedom Flight, a challenging piece meant to impress. Your Kanto, on the other hand. They lapsed into appreciative silence while he played. Kanto finished with a flourish. Lady Bathsheba clapped thunderously. Thank you, my dear. Your playing. There are no words. Handsome, talented, and a connoisseur of tea. Such talent and good breeding, rare jewels found in such a remote district. You will fit right in at court. Thank you. Such high praise. The vizier is most kind, Kanto said. He and Shep bowed and returned to the table. Come, sit beside me. Lady Bathsheba and Kanto turned Jhee's way. She inclined her head. Where did you learn to play so brilliantly? Tutors. Though I am largely self-taught. Our corner of the district is so far off the main lanes. Not too many tutors were willing to make the journey. Certainly none as brilliant or prestigious as you, my lady. My family could spare the expense. I was an exception. My dames were always great matrons of the arts. I was talking to my honored wife about improving the state of education in our district, particularly regarding art and music. Talented and civic-minded. This one is such a flatterer. Makes me feel almost like a young woman again. Justicar, I might have to borrow him from you. Lady Bathsheba drank from her teacup and nodded approvingly. A perfect pour. Precisely spiced. Hard to do with this blend. Thank you, Vizier. Black forest tea has such a dominant flavor. It must be delicately treated so it does not overpower. My goodness, I just noticed the little lovely foil work on your nails. I'm amazed it didn't get damaged in your playing. The trick is to apply another layer of lacquer once it's properly set up. The two laughed and got on famously. Whenever the lady so much as held out her cup, Kanto rushed to refill it. Shep from his newly demoted position gave Jhee another smirk. Perhaps Jhee had been too fast to rule out a match between Kanto and the vizier. Yet she imagined the conversation with Lady Cadence. Trapped at the isolated Abbey with these sexist women was surely not what his grandmamere had in mind. The Abbey was a woefully inappropriate place for him. This place is too small for her husband. She was too small for her husband, and if she were to be so selfish, the match held little social political advantage for her. Jhee occupied herself during Lady Bathsheba's distraction with a closer look at the room details. The martial theme to the decor had not been what she expected from a music tutor. A jostle caused the finger maze to slip. She caught the finger maze and placed it with some architectural plans for an archive expansion on the nearby table. The speckled texture of the ritual collar gave her pause. Of a ritual collar gave her pause. Such sumptuous robes this time, Justicar. Was it something I said? No, Lady Bathsheba, Jhee said, then finished in her head. It wasn't one snobbish thing you said. It was everything. She returned her attention to her companions. She hid her mouth with her cup so Lady Bathsheba would not see her frown. The Lady Bathshebas of the world did not worry about having much younger husbands. They viewed husbands as pets. There would be more women like this in the capital. Not the ideal situation she wished for Kanto. In the end, it would be his choice. One insurmountable concern outweighed the others for Jhee. Someone here may have killed Sahaley and the young men. Even if the deaths weren't murder, the clergy had little love for anyone save themselves. In my indelicate way, I thought I was doing you a favor. My warnings about court were not hyperbole. I also sought to test you. Conscientious officials are not always the norm. Are you also a veteran? Intelligence pull. Wealthy enough for your family to position you away from real danger. Jhee sipped some more tea. Please, don't take that wrong. As an official, a vizier, I had a way out of combat. Like yourself. Someone as fearless and civic-minded as yourself, I might have thought you'd get a commission to the Navy. I prefer solid ground. Lady Bathsheba studied Jhee for a moment. I continue to scandalize you. A privilege of getting older is no longer concerning yourself with trivial niceties or conventions. Those are young women's cares and concern of court. I live a more rustic life here. A gracious host. Their assembly ate a most excellent meal of crispy pork, braised rice and onions, yams, kale and fennel salad, and a marvelous poached tuna, accompanied by a humble decanter of Tranquility Bridges Light. As expected, Murray favored generous helpings of salad and heavily salted pork in avoidance of the starch and other animal proteins. Pasco standards. No land meat. Did I get it correct? Jhee dabbed her mouth with her napkin. You did, my lady. Lady Bathsheba addressed Murray. Your wife mentioned you are into dietetics. Are you whose palate we are accommodating? I'm afraid I can't take all the credit, Vizier. Was everything to your satisfaction, gentlemen? The crispy pork was cooked to perfection, Kanto said. Shep nodded enthusiastically. It helps when you start with such prime cuts. It seems the privation which hit the rest of the isles has yet to do so here, Murray said. Jhee winced. Kanto pinched Murray just under the table. She twitched. Everything was wonderful, Vizier. Yet you did not touch most of the dishes. I'm watching my saline levels. Fresh lung? A mild case. Your star mirrors a true daughter of the sea, Justicar. Did you try the draught I suggested? I heard it works wonders on fresh lung as well. Not yet, my lady. Lady Bathsheba twisted her napkin. Make sure you do so soon. Have you spoken to the archivist yet? It might take some more time. Elkanah has proved obstinate. You must really have barnacled her keel. Thank you, Lady Bathsheba. Thank you for hosting us. Thank you, Lady Bathsheba, for hosting us, Murray said. Might I ask from what home isle do you hail? hail. I am from Wallabia. Of course. Whole mile to this magnificent tea. And if I remember my biology and geography correctly, Chiroptis, the bat-fleshed or batwing May, and Matekeru Willabian, violet harvest nut, one of the various plants called seed of enlightenment. Isn't everything on Wallabia poisonous? My biology tutor joked it was like everything on the isle was trying to kill everything else. A studious one. I see why you and your Dime are so well suited. How are your ciphering studies? Are you familiar with the basics of gyration? Ray grinned, complete with veiled hoods and protective circles for the menfolk. Talk about your ancient knowledge. Jhee swallowed her bite of yam and wiped her mouth. It's the tradition. I'd do you a disservice if I didn't instruct you in the proper forms and etiquette, though I try to adhere to more modern mechanist methods. Ancients sometimes have knowledge we don't. We weren't here first. There are beings older than us, forces beyond our comprehension, not just in the Abbey, but in the cosmos. Beings older than when we emerged and slapped the title of Maker on everything. Remember, it wasn't us who aligned the worlds and the moons. You speak of the first ones, the prototypes. A closer stream of distant knowledge intrigues me more. I heard a strange term. Mistabis. Does that mean anything to you? A mythical figure who once ruled the island. I hear tale of a resurgence in her blood cult. They seek to revive the practices of the old days and bring back the sacrifices and orgies. There are tales of strange figures walking the halls at all hours of day or night. Perhaps these are the ghosts that you claim to have seen. Nothing supernatural, simply all too mortal beings bent on resurrecting their heretical deities. Rumors abound of strange lights and figures seen about the Abbey and on the islands. Hints of cultish pagan rites being performed in the now. Surely you do not believe in the last hunt, Lady Bathsheba. I believe they believe it, which is more than enough. For someone who doesn't believe, this appears to unsettle you. I don't know about the deacon's maligned forces or restless spirits, but I do know something's amiss here with respect to casting. You've been practicing here. Have you noticed a difference to the prime forces? My ciphering did feel off. The Abbey's restrictions on arcana have deep roots. How so? The choral edifice showcases examples of the earliest preserving arcana used to speed the mineralization process and fetter the dead. The reliquary, much like shrines, serves to accumulate ancestral power. This abbey is a giant spirit battery, Justicar. Perhaps lights seen on the marsh were just illicit revelers and pranksters, or perhaps is for some more far deeper, darker powers from which this isle draws its healing energy. The ichor of a power which sleeps beneath the isle. Jhee took the initiative to lighten the mood and steer the conversation towards less existential topics. Husbands, if you would delight us again with your skills. It is my honor, Dembe, Kanto said. Any particular piece? Do you perhaps know the strawberry letters? Lady Bathsheba asked. Kanto tuned his lute. Shep took up a position beside the chair. Would you happen to have any maps of the island? Jhee asked. I have, over here. I'd be delighted to see them, Lady Bathsheba. Lady Bathsheba walked Jhee to a corner of her chambers. She opened a giant sharkskin-bound atlas and leafed through it. Do you still have the map I gave you? I have a few landmarks you might find interesting. Indeed. Here, have a close look at this one. Jhee leaned towards the bound volume. The vizier marked the map with several court symbols. At Jhee's puzzled look, the lady whispered, We're not alone. I suspect I've been watched. I'm being watched. I've heard odd sounds while I'm supposedly alone. You must forgive my behavior in our previous meeting, Justicar. I didn't know who might be listening or if you could be trusted. I thought it better of eavesdroppers to think us at odds. The lady is most wise, Jhee said. She glanced around now, suddenly paranoid rather than annoyed. At Jhee's nod, Shep whispered in Kendall's ear, then performed a simpler, much louder battle stomp as accompaniment. The atmosphere here changed when Sahaley was appointed. We had all expected it to be Piermo. I don't think the high clergy accepted the chief abbess chose an outsider. Beyond fell rumors of orgies and malign forces, the name you mentioned, the Miss Abbess, surfaced shortly thereafter. She pursed her lips. I discovered these after we last met, poking around the archives. Jhee looked closely and found a proposal and blueprints for commercializing the orchards and vineyards, submitted by Sister Sarah. Who else knows about these? If I found these in the archives, it would be the easiest task in the world for Akana to have as well. Lady Bathsheba quickly rolled up the map and snatched up the glow orb. No, I've said too much. Jhee touched her arm gently. No, please continue. There's a possibility I hesitate to entertain. I'm not so sure my accident was an accident. Forgive my impertinence, Lady Bathsheba, but I must ask. Where were you during the other deaths? Of course, I would expect no less. I was here in my chambers. Jhee frowned and said, all three? Not a very good alibi, I know. Wait, when prospective Lee drowned, I had jammed a toe and was being treated at the infirmary. The physician or her assistant should be able to verify I stayed there until morning. I will check this out and get back to you. Please do. The sooner you rule me out, the sooner you can focus on who might have committed these horrible crimes. Moray's eyelids flooded. She slumped over in her chair. Jhee immediately rushed over. Are you unwell? Just somewhat achy and lightheaded. I must have eaten something that didn't agree with me. Perhaps we should retire for the evening. Will you be able to manage by yourselves, or should we seek out assistance? Lady Bathsheba asked. I can make it, Marie said. No need to fuss. Before they left, Lady Bathsheba pressed several signets into her hand. Justicar, you might need these if you are serious about education. For as long as you are here, feel free to visit and talk as you desire. I enjoy the reminders you give me of court. Such a joy to have those closer to my station to converse with, and possibly a kindred spirit. Now, you must go quickly and return to your husbands and wife and hug them and cherish them, for dark days may be upon us again. End of chapter 8. Let's do one more chapter and then call it a day. It's a day. Oh, chapter 9. The clergy. The infirmary. As their cohort journeyed back to their room, Jhee kept a slow pace. Kanto and Murray had their arms linked with hers. Shep lagged. Jhee mused on the details of the case in between checking on Murray. Kanto was all grins and had a bounce to his step. No need to keep such a slow pace for me, Murray said. I'm feeling better already. No rush after such an exquisite meal, Jhee said. Too exquisite, Kanto eyed Murray. A shame we had to cut the evening short. I, for one, had had enough, not the least because of all those ghastly relics and artwork on the walls. Reminders of a more savage time, Shep said. Now you sound like the lady, Jhee said. I have a small confession to make, Dinbei. I thought you could use a reason to leave. I knew it, Kanto said. You little liar. I was It wasn't quite a lie. Her outdated views and elitists had begun to make me ill. You wouldn't believe the things she said while you and Shep performed. I wasn't sure if I could stomach another moment of flattering her. Clever girl. I had grown rather tired with the evening myself. Murray feigned shock. No! Your eyes kept doing that shade they do before you lose your temper. Kanto snuggled closer to Jhee, who patted his hand. Lady Bathsheba thoroughly and entirely creeped me out with all her talk of ghosts and evil forces at the end, though, he said. Murray coughed. Jhee squeezed her arm in response. She creeped me out with all her leering. Perhaps it was best we left before you descended into a self-righteous lecture, Denier. I think we made a good impression anyway. Signet colds of introduction. Thanks to you, husband, Jhee said. A blush pinked his eyes. They exchanged smiles before he faced away. Jhee quickened their pace. At the room, Jhee plopped in the chair. She fingered the access writ Lady Bathsheba had slipped in with the list of education contacts. If indeed Lady Bathsheba aimed to come off as a sexist snob and give the impression they were at odds, she had more than succeeded. She regretted her earlier ungracious thoughts which had accused Lady Bathsheba of snobbery. Reconsidering the meeting, she may have taken the lady's words and actions the wrong way due to her beleaguered state of mind. You're the one looking wayworn now, Dinbei. I've been climbing stairs and visiting musty and moldy spires all day. While you may not have a headache, I do. I'd refresh your poultice, but our herbal stores are low. She changed from her robes into simple evening attire, yet left the wrap in place as the poultice did help. She ran a thumb over the textured access writ. Give me a list. I've meant to visit the infirmary anyway. I'll see if they can have some remedy for my sinuses as well. In the hall, Jhee hesitated. She weighed the writ in her hand against Murray's list. Lady Bathsheba had drawn her attention to the storehouses at least twice. She consulted the map. The storehouses and the infirmary were in different axes of the Abbey. One prospective had died of sickness. They must have been tended by the Abbey physician. The infirmary may have also be where Saheli got her meditation aids. Jhee headed there. A young male's prospective sat the reception desk drawing anatomical pictures or nudes. No one else occupied the infirmary. He scrambled to his feet, shoved the apartments aside, and bowed, a protocol neither Jhee's office nor social status required. Nudes, then. She caught the whiff of burst woodsy cologne. Justicar. Whatever is the matter? You have not taken ill, have you? Not as such. I've been in and out of dreadful weather. Along the way, I developed a terrible headache. I also hope to procure medicinal supplies. Is the physician in? The young man's eye went wide. You actually want to see the physician? Perhaps the Justicar would rather see if it goes away on its own. I'd like to see the physician this instant. Will that be a problem? No, not at all. What do you do here? He glanced at the pile where his parchments nestled. I'm the infirmarian. I see to the non-medical needs of those confined to the infirmary. A crash sounded behind the physician's door. Then something thudded to the ground. The prospective knocked. The door flew open. He jumped back as a short, graying woman, barely taller than a shark dog, stumbled out. How many times have I told you not to move my equipment? And what's all this whispering out here? You best not have your friends here shirking their duties. The infirmary glanced at Jhee. Oh, a patient. The physician spat in her hands and slicked back her hair. She straightened out her robes before rushing to greet Jhee. A wave of the most horrendous body odor came with her. Jhee preempted her forearm clasp by initiating a bowed greeting. He's as lazy as the refugees. I'm not like these other sisters. I expect my assistants to work. These young men coming through today are nothing like they were in my day. You must be the famous Justicar. I'm Sister Zalver. I'd hardly say famous, Jhee said. Only to those such as myself, I suppose. I subscribe to the judicial law wire. Followed the write-ups you did for JJ of Marpelay and Frontiers and Arcane Forensics, and read every Dispatches from Arrow Point story twice. I absolutely loved your ingenuity in the 12 Murders in the Manor. What brings you to seek my humble assistance? That wasn't... Never mind. What was she going to say? That wasn't me, it was my literary counterpart. Her fictional account had supplanted the truth in the popular imagination, much as Jaja had wanted it to. I wanted to pick up some supplies, and perhaps something for a headache. Come, have a seat here. Sister Jalva urged her to an exam table. Jhee sighed with relief when the woman put on gloves before timing her pulse. She had Jhee's eyes forced open before she knew it. Eye color bright and shiny? Good. Here, drink this draught. What is it? Tranquility Gold mixed with Abbey extract. Opens the blood vessels. Gets the circulation going. Do be warned, it does have a purgative effect. Indeed, Abbey extract did. Drunk and vomiting while lightheaded was